Hello, everybody. How's it going? I lead this off by saying I'm one of your hosts. My name is Greg Huss. I'm on the Cubs on Deck podcast, but today it's just me. It's only me, and I'm only on the Northside Bound YouTube page. So today, I don't know. We're gonna see how today goes. This is my first time going live on YouTube solo like this, so it could be pretty interesting. But yesterday, on Monday, I released my updated top 40 prospects in the Cubs farm system, and there's a lot of commotion about what I put out there in this top 40. So I wanted to kind of hop on here and take a look at what's going on, kind of run through my list a little bit, answer some questions. I know there were plenty of questions sitting online, on Twitter, on Facebook. I've got kind of a notepad here of some questions that were sent in without knowing that I was going to do the show. I'm going to address some of those. And then hopefully you guys out there in the YouTube chat will join in and have some fun and check out make some comment on the underneath the video here with some questions, with some comments, with some concerns about who I have here in the top 40. Should be interesting. I have no idea how long I'm going to stay on here. It depends on how many questions I run through. I don't know if this is going to go on the Cubs on Deck podcast feed on Apple, on Spotify, and all that good stuff. It may. If it goes poorly, it probably won't. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so I've already got a couple questions here. Basically, before I dig in, I guess I'll run through this graphic. Hopefully, everybody's hearing me just fine. Typically, I have a co-host on the show that can tell me my audio is good or bad. So hopefully, you guys can hear me just fine. If you can comment in the replies there and let me know. But I'm going to run through this top 40, not necessarily the players, but what I have kind of going with the tiers here, because the tiers are super, super important and will be super important as I run through some of these questions and answer some of these. So I want to run through what these tiers look like. Thank you guys, Kurt and Rich, letting me know that the audio is good. I appreciate that. So PCA is the number one prospect in the Cubs farm system. That's going to be the case literally everywhere. According to MLB Pipeline, he is now a top 10 prospect in all of baseball, which is pretty elite. I mean, for a system that does not have an elite prospect, allegedly, pretty crazy to see a guy in at number 10 in all of baseball. Cade Horton was another guy that kind of made a big jump into that ranking in the top 100 up to number 50, top 50. I talked with Max Toma on the podcast that we actually released this morning. I should probably plug that a little bit more, but we released the podcast this morning with Max Toma, who is the South Bend Cubs broadcaster. And he was really hinting at the fact that it's really nice that we have a top 10 guy and a top 50. Those nice round numbers are fun to kind of talk on. But again, back to my list here. I've got 6 different tiers. That first tier is only one player. That is Pete Crow Armstrong. He's in a tier all to his own. He's clearly the best in the system. He's an elite, in my eyes, clearly top 20 prospect in all of baseball. He is by himself atop this entire ranking. Tier 2, you can kind of see the lines on the screen here. You can kind of see the lines. Let me see if I can pull in a little pointer here. Yeah. Okay, so you can kind of see the lines here, kind of delineating the difference between these tiers. Hopefully that helps out here during this conversation. The next tier is ranked 2 through 6, and those are top 100 type guys, right? So I know right now, according to Pipeline, there's only 3 prospects in the system: PCA, Cade Horton, and Ben Brown, that are considered top 100 guys. But all 6 of those guys right there, 1 through 6, are guys that you can really consider to be top 100 guys. After that is 7 and 8, which is Miguel Amaya and Jackson Ferris. Those are guys that they have reasonable top 100 arguments in my eyes. Probably closer to the 150 to 200 range, but I listened to a conversation that they're top 100. Tier 4 is James Triantos at number 9 through Cole Franklin at number 16. Those guys are I describe it as that high quality depth that we've been kind of waiting on. We've talked about the depth in the system for a long, long time, but I think that's come in the form of some real bench guys. There's a lot of bench type talent in the system for years. This is the high quality depth. Those guys that in past years, they would be ranked top 5 in the system in some of those down years in the system. So to have them ranked 9 through 16 is pretty huge. The next tier there is Pablo Allende at 17 through Riley Thompson at number 27. I've kind of described these guys as successful development means they are MLB starters or high leverage relievers at the major league level, right? So These are kind of they are contributing in a bigger way at the major league level. And then 28 at Luis Devers, all the way through the end of the list, Ezekiel Pagan at number 40. In my eyes, successful development for those guys means they're MLB bench bats, they're low leverage relievers, they're still contributing at the major league level, but in an ideal world, their ideal development is contributing in a lower leverage type role. So, and the emphasis with those tiers is that I listen to an argument with any kind of tinkering within, right? So if you want Jake Slaughter, who I have at number 39, if you want him up at 29, I listen to that argument. I think these tiers are pretty important, especially once you get further and further. You see those tiers get bigger and bigger as you go further down the list here, and that's because the differences between these guys is so like minute that I would listen to really any argument on any of these guys within those tiers. So if you're commenting or arguing about Luis Vasquez should be 31, not 32, I agree. I'm not gonna argue too much with that. So let's dig into some questions here. I don't want to delay this too awful long. We'll just kind of go down the line. Kurt was the first person to get this in even before we went live on this, so I appreciate it. Kurt, he asked, is it time to worry about Christian Hernandez because he has Jefferson Rojas above Hernandez like I do. I've got Rojas at 14, Christian Hernandez at 15. I don't think it's time to worry yet about Christian Hernandez. I think that I mentioned in my article which you can check out my top 40 write-ups in the comments section below in my description below. But my thing with Christian Hernandez is he's one of the very few guys that I still view the exact same basically as I did before the season started. So I think that the good examples of that are Christian Hernandez and Kevin Made. I kind of view them in the exact same light that I did coming into the year. With Christian, it's a matter of you got to remember that he's still super, super young, performing in full season ball. And I think he's performing how you would expect an 18, 19-year-old guy to perform at full season ball. The numbers aren't outrageously bad. You look at his slash line, and that's not super pretty. But remember that he's playing in Myrtle Beach. He's playing in the Carolina League. It's really hard to hit there. So if you go reference over at Northside Bound, over the hitting statistics page, you can reference my bash score that I created this past offseason. And basically that is taking into account a player's age compared to the level that he's playing at, the ballpark, like the ballpark factors, the league that he's playing at, all that good stuff. So it's very WRC plus related. It's a lot like that in a lot of ways where 100 is exactly league average. And Christian has been hovering right around 100 for most of the year. I think that for a while he was up close to like 110, which makes him 10% better than league average. I think now at this point, I'd have to go check, but he's closer to right around league average when you take into account his age and all that good stuff. So I'm not too awful worried about Christian. I think that like, obviously I want him to perform better than what we've seen so far, but I don't think it's a disappointing year. I think it really lends itself to like the rest of these players 1 through 14, for the most part, have performed pretty strong, right? So obviously Brennan Davis hasn't had a very good year this year. Matt Mervis was really hot in AAA to start off the year, struggled in the majors, but like a lot of these guys, PCA, Cade Horton, Owen Casey, Ben Brown, Jordan Wicks, Miguel Amaya, Jackson Ferris, James Triantos, all Jefferson Rojas, all of those guys have been really, really strong this year. So it's as much them piggybacking and jumping over Christian Hernandez as Christian Hernandez falling back down in the rankings. So that's kind of my view of Hernandez. Now, has it been a strong year? Obviously not. It hasn't been a strong year for Christian. I think that there's still a lot of things that need to get right with him at the plate. I think that he's not really barreling balls like the way you'd expect to. The field to hit is not really there like we hope. And there's some lapses on defense, but remember, he's super, super young. I was expecting some of this stuff coming into the year. So I appreciate the question, Kurt. I think there might have been another one down the line from you, and I'll get to that here in a minute. Let's go to Nicholas, who sent in a question, excuse me, about who do I see on this, who on this list do I see the Cubs maybe parting with for MLB talent at the deadline? That is a really good question that I always struggle with answering this type of question. I'm gonna remove this real quick so we can still see some of this list. Um, this is always a question I really struggle with because it's so much about what other teams are looking for and less about what the Cubs are looking for, right? The Cubs could be looking for anything at the major league level, and that doesn't really impact who you are trading away. I mean, in terms of talent wise, yeah, but not necessarily position or things like that. If we're looking at a guy and like looking for somewhere where he might be a Rule 5 draft pick at the end of this year, Rule 5 draft eligible at the end of this year, uh, minor league free agent eligible at the end of this year, I think that's a good place to start. And with that, I'll probably go to 31, Jonathan Perlaza, who is absolutely tearing it up in AAA right now, but he is minor league free agent eligible at the end of this year. So if he's not added to the 40-man roster, he then becomes a free agent like he was actually this past season. The Cubs re-signed him. Now, I don't see a scenario where he reaches minor league free agency and then re-signs with the Cubs a second time. That just seems kind of out there and not very likely. So I'm going to go with Jonathan Perlaza. It feels like, especially with some outfield depth in Chicago, I think that he is not necessarily like a guy that's going to move the needle for the Cubs. He's not a PCA type prospect where he can be slotted in every single day in Chicago. And because of that, I think Jonathan Perlaza might be a good candidate for a trade. I'd love to see him in the major leagues right now with the Cubs. Like me saying that doesn't mean that I think he's worthless or not useful for the Cubs. I think he could play for the Cubs right now and DH. But we also just saw Jared Young just get promoted today. So I know we're not talking about those promotions. There's been a lot of promotions today. Jordan Wicks and Luis Vasquez and Michael Arias all getting promoted up. But I think that Jonathan Perlaza has a chance to DH in the major leagues this year, but he might also be a trade candidate at some point here. All right, let's see what we got here as far as some more questions. Thanks for sending that in, Nicholas. I appreciate both of you guys, Kurt and Nicholas, sending in questions. Let's roll down here. If you guys have questions, be sure to send them in. I have a couple more here and also some that I jotted down for social media. But if you guys have questions, comment on the YouTube chat. I am more than happy to answer whatever questions. I'll keep this going. Maybe not as long as I keep getting questions in if they keep coming in strong, but I'll keep going for a while here. I've got a free evening, so might as well, right? All right. We got another question from Kurt asking me to hype up Cole Franklin a little bit. He had him in a clear top 15 prospect, which is awesome. Awesome to me because he might be the guy that I've heard the most like variance back from in terms of where he ranks. I know he's struggled a little bit more since he's struggled a decent amount more since he got promoted up to Double A Tennessee. But he just looks different this year to me. He looks a whole lot different than he's looked in the past. I think the major thing with Cole is that confidence. The confidence looks to be there. It looks like he's confident to throw any pitch in any count. He's got the four-seam fastball. He's got the curveball. He's got the slider. He's got the changeup. I think all four pitches are good, and I think all four pitches have been good dating back to last year. He's introduced this new slider, obviously, this year, but he's always had good stuff. It just, I think he would get hit around a little bit, and that confidence would go away, and you could see it happening during the game. This year, he seems a whole lot more confident throwing pitches in different counts, different pitches in different counts, and the stuff is playing up. For Cole, I put in the article there that what I want to see from him is throwing 3 pitches and looking good doing so in one start, right? So he's gone out there and he's featured a four-seam fastball and a slider that's looked good in one start. He's thrown a curveball and a changeup that looks good in one start. I don't necessarily need to see all 4 pitches working in one start. That's a great day at the office. But if we can see a guy like Cole Franklin with good stuff feature 3 different pitches that he's featuring and they look really good in an outing, I think that's a pretty damn good day for Cole Franklin. So I got him at 16 there in that third tier of players. But I think that he honestly is more towards the back end of that tier. I think I said that you can kind of mix and match guys, and I would listen to Cole being bumped up quite a bit. I think certain prospect writers would bump him up a little bit, but I've also heard people doubting him a little bit and bumping him down near that sixth tier between 28 and 40. So a lot of different moving parts for Cole Franklin. Excited to see him continue to like improve and put things together a little bit more in Double A Tennessee this year. That'll be exciting to watch. All right. Looks like we got another Nicholas questions. We also have some other questions coming in the chat, which is awesome. I'm featuring Kurt and Nicholas so far, which is fun. He asked another question: how do you balance upside versus floor when making a ranking list? Dude, if I wish that I knew the answer to that question. I even as someone who does these rankings, it's so hard to balance those two things, dude. It is incredibly difficult. Um, I used to do it where back when I was writing at Cubs Insider and doing my own little blog before the Northside Bound days, I wouldn't rank players unless I'd seen them play on MILB TV, which at the time was from Eugene, which was short season, up through the major leagues, because it was just so difficult to analyze and rank a guy who'd only been in the Arizona Complex League or the Dominican Summer League, where I hadn't seen live video of these guys. And just like think about ranking a guy like Adon Sanchez, who is ranked number 23 on my list here, with a guy like Ben Brown or like Matt Mervis, even who's already been in the major leagues. Or honestly, Ben Brown is probably a better example, right? You're ranking Ben Brown, who is a guy in his 23 years old or so. He's in AAA. He's already on the 40-man roster, just a step away from the major leagues. And then you got Adon Sanchez, who is in the Arizona Complex League. He's still an 18-year-old kid, and we haven't even seen him live. Like it's a position player versus a pitcher. It's age old versus young. It's close to the major leagues, far away from the major leagues. It's like it's so difficult to compare those two guys. And that's actually why I left off Angel Cepeda and Derniche Valdez from this list, because they're still in the Dominican Summer League. We haven't even seen pictures of these guys in Arizona from Rich Biesterfeld, who's so good at grabbing pictures of these guys. So I did not rank those two players in the DSL, although like they would probably be, if you're like doing a comprehensive list of the entire organization, they probably should be on the top 40. I just didn't feel comfortable ranking them. So to answer this question from Nicholas about how I balance upside versus floor, very carefully, I guess is my answer. You got to take into account, like with PCA, right? He's got that floor already intact because he's got the speed, he's got the Gold Glove defense in center field. If you can put it all together, then he's like an elite player. If you can put it all together at the plate, he's an elite player at the major league level. And so that's why that combination of upside and floor is why he's clearly number one in my eyes. Kevin Alcantara, you're banking a whole lot on upside. There's a big variance in what his final outcome could be. And so weighing that, it becomes very, very difficult. There's no, I guess my long-winded answer to this, Nicholas, is that there's no rhyme or reason on how I do it. I think it depends from circumstance to circumstance how I go about doing this. That's not what I wanted to do. All right. What else we got? Stephen Monk in the replies. I love it. Stephen asked, any chance James Triantos goes back to third base? That's a great question. I think that at this point, I don't want to speak. I haven't spoken to anybody with the Cubs organization saying one way or the other. He is so difficult to understand defensively. Triantos is. I've heard reports that he's been very strong at second base defensively. I've heard reports that he's been really poor defensively at second base. We know that I think it was that Baseball America report before the season saying Triantos is destined for that Ty France role at first base, which I thought was a ridiculous thing to say about a 20-year-old in high A. But with James Triantos, I think right now you're focused on getting him average to above average at one position first, and then seeing if you can move him over to third base. I think it's pretty telling that he played almost all of his time last year in 2022 at third base, and now he's playing almost all of his time at second base this year. So I think that the Cubs probably believe in him at second base a little bit more than third at this time, And I just like to see him continue to develop there, get better defensively, and see how we're going. But I don't think it's out of the question. Typically, you see these position changes and playing more positions once you climb up the ladder. Once you get up to Double A Tennessee and get up to Triple A Iowa. So kind of moving around the infield is not quite there and not quite happening for James Triantos yet. I'm not worried about that really in the slightest. All right, let's see what we got here. See if we got any responses on Twitter as well. Might as well do that, right? See if anybody's commenting there. It feels weird. Whenever I can't really have any downtime without saying any words. I can't kick it over to a co-host to help me out on this. All right, let's see what we got here. Who's asking questions? We got Michael Eddy hold on. I'll go to Michael Eddy here. Michael Eddy's in the comments asking on a scale from 1 to 10, how concerned are we about Ben Brown's control issues? I will give it I'll give it a 3.5. Or a 3. I'll even give it a 3. I don't even need to go the extra half. I'll give it a 3. Yeah, I think it's something to like keep an eye on, but not something to be even like concerned about at all, which is why I gave it that 3. I think he's seeing a circumstance. I think he's seeing two different things happen, right? Where there's been an uptick in his stuff from last year compared to this year. Honestly, not a crazy uptick, just a little bit more spin on the slider and curveball, a little more juice on the fastball, and commanding and controlling that becomes a little more difficult. And then the second thing is he's going from Double A Tennessee, where he had those tacky baseballs where he could do whatever the hell he wanted to do with them, and now he jumped up to Iowa where he doesn't have that anymore. I hate that they went to those tacky baseballs in AAA or in Double A, the Southern League, because now we're seeing guys have to readjust out of using those baseballs. I guarantee that we're gonna see that with Jordan Wicks now that he's been promoted up to AAA Iowa. I guarantee we're gonna see a little bit of an adjustment period, not only because he is going up to harder competition, but because he's going from having one type of baseball to a very clearly different type of baseball when he gets to AAA Iowa, you know? So I give it a 3 for Ben Brown. It's something to keep an eye on, but I'm not too bad about it. All right, we got Rich Biesterfeld, our guy, our photographer for Northside Bound down in Mesa. Rich asked thoughts on Bryce Windham. Rich, you know how to cater to me. Thoughts on Bryce Windham? He's under the radar, but a freak athlete who's versatile and swinging the bat well at Iowa. Yeah, he didn't make this top 40, but he's just another. There's guys that miss top 40s that can contribute at the major league level in certain ways. I think that what Bryce Windham brings to the table is not something that's ever going to be seen on a top prospect list, because you're a lot of times ranking and listing guys based on those loud tools that they have, even if it's not like a loud tool, right? But just like tools that you can put numbers on and stuff like that, and you can identify very, very clearly. What Bryce does is he just kind of does all the little things, right? He's that guy behind the plate who calls a great game. Pitchers love throwing to him. He is a freak athlete. So he was a second baseman in college. He was a center fielder in college a little bit too, I believe. He's a really good guy, a really good athlete, and during his entire time in the minors, he's been a guy that's walked as much or more than he struck out, and that's a useful player. So Bryce Windham is. I've been shouting for the past couple of years. If the dude can just develop like a little bit of power, not even average power. I told him, I was like, if you can just develop a little bit of power, that completely changes his profile. Completely changes his profile. So yeah, I love Bryce Windham. Not a top 40 guy in my eyes, but like I don't want that to come across as a knock, because I think that he can carve out a role. I think the third catcher role was created like that position on a roster is created for Bryce Windham, where he can be that third catcher. He can manage a pitching staff. He can be a great teammate, but also in a pinch, you can toss him out there at second base if you absolutely need to. Very PJ Higgins in that way. Honestly, PJ Higgins in a lot of ways. Take away PJ Higgins, like pure hit for a little bit of pop, I guess, but add Bryce Windham being like a much better athlete, you know. So that third catcher role seems destined for Bryce Windham at some point here down the road. All right. What do we got? We got Michael Eddy. We got a comment from him. We've already seen what a fastball dependent pitcher does in the majors, and Estrada. Is Palencia in the same trouble as him? Okay. Yeah, great. This is a really, really good question. I wrote about this specifically. I don't know if you referenced this question because I mentioned something like that in the article I wrote that you can see down in the description, because I specifically called out the Palencia to Estrada comparison here. Daniel Palencia, I actually ranked Luke Little there at 18. I'm actually covering. I'm going to remove this question for a second to unblock Daniel Palencia. Luke Little is 18th and Daniel Palencia is 19th. And I was very, very strategic in those rankings, right? Where I've been talking about these tiers, 17 through 27 can be pretty interchangeable. And I do believe that like Palencia and Luke Little can be interchanged. And I'd listen to that conversation. Absolutely. But I was very careful about ranking Luke Little above Daniel Palencia. And my thinking is like, we love a guy like Daniel Palencia who can go out there and throw gas. Like we know that fastball is special. We know the fastball touches 103 if need be. And when he lives up in the zone with it, it's something crazy. My thing with Luke Little, on the other hand, is that he brings some more quirks to the table, right? Luke Little is a big lefty. He's coming at a weird arm slot for hitters, really tough on left-handed batters. He's still throwing mid to upper 90s, and he's got a pretty damn good slider too. I think that like there's more backup to like fall back. Like if Luke Little drops like 2 miles per hour, then he's still a useful player in a lot of other ways. Because he still has all those other good qualities. Daniel Palencia, if we see a situation like Jeremiah Estrada where he loses a few ticks, right? Jeremiah Estrada went from going high 90s to like going mid 90s. And even though the metrics on his fastball were elite, like literally like 80, like 70, 80 grade metrics in terms of spin rate and cut ride on that fastball for Jeremiah Estrada, it means a whole lot if you're going from 98 to 95. Like that's tough on a reliever. So I kind of hedged my bets here with Daniel Palencia a little bit. I have confidence that he can continue throwing absolute gas. I have confidence in the slider being good, the curveball being good. And I really still have confidence. The reason why he's as high as he is on this, he's ranked 19, is because I still believe there's a chance that he can be converted back to the rotation if need be. If I viewed him as a 100% pure reliever moving forward in his career, I'd have him ranked down there in the 30s near Bailey Horn. Like Bailey Horn is my top ranked relief only prospect in the system. But pure relievers only bring so much value to a major league team. So with Daniel Palencia, I'm hedging a little bit of moving back to being a starter in there, and I'm also hedging a little bit where like what happens if he does lose some of that velo. If he drops down to 97, the metrics on his fastball are not nearly as good as what we've seen from Jeremiah Estrada. Right? There's not that ride. There's not that rising action on Daniel Palencia's fastball as we saw on Jeremiah Estrada's. So if he drops down from consistently hitting 100 to consistently hitting 97, I mean, yeah, he's still throwing 97. He can still be valuable, obviously. But I think it's worth keeping in mind. I like in no way, shape, or form am I off the Daniel Palencia bandwagon in this move to the bullpen. If anything, it excites me that he's on the fast track to the majors now. So, but it's just that's something to keep in mind for sure. All right. Let's see what we got here. Michael. All right. This is even a question. I appreciate Michael sending this in. You guys are my number one prospect guys. I appreciate it. Always fun hearing from listeners. We love doing it, man. I hosting Cubs on Deck is one of the most fun things. And that's honestly why I'm dabbling here in this video. We're going on 30 minutes of me talking at myself. But I've loved putting together this podcast over the years. First as growing Cubs show, and now as Cubs on Deck, with Brian Smith and with Greg Zumak and with the four broadcasters that I've had on, and having Aram Layton on from that national perspective, and all that good stuff, man. And having Brendan Miller on the show recently, a couple episodes ago, getting that like major league perspective of prospects on the show. I've loved doing it. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and it means a whole lot to see so many people tuning into this podcast of us talking real nerdy about some prospects. So All right, we got a question from Kurt asking about Michael Arias versus Brody McCola. He feels like Brody got all the hype, but Arias got promoted first. Yeah, that is one thing that is super interesting that Michael Arias was promoted before Brody McCola. I would never in a million years have predicted that happening. But the reason why that did happen is that Michael Arias is Rule 5 eligible at the end of the season. So with that being the case, like they have to see what they've got in Michael Arias. Obviously, this stuff is very, very good. The fastball touches high 90 or kind of sits high 90s. The slider is really good. The changeup is probably his best pitch. Obviously, it's control problems to a certain degree, but he's been better at that as the season's worn on. Michael Arias, you got to find out what you have with him, and that's probably why he was promoted first. But Brody McCola is one of my, honestly, maybe one of my favorite prospects in the entire system to watch on a daily basis whenever he takes the mound. Yeah, I think that it's been interesting with Brody because he really, I mean, I don't have the numbers pulled up right in front of me right now, but I'm pretty sure still to date, he is either leading or first, or either first or second in almost every single pitching category statistically in the system this year. Him along with Kate Horton. And like granted, like he is a college guy playing at the low A level. He is a D2 guy. He was drafted as a D2 guy, but like he's still a college guy going against a lot younger players. He's been just super, super strong. He's ready for the next. He's been ready for that next challenge in South Bend for literally going on a month now. Like he's ready for that promotion. So having Arias at 22 and Brody McCullough at 25 feels super. Like I'm glad I landed on that because that's a very close range for those two players. And what I'm seeing is in as far as the eye test and the numbers and all that good stuff are very close to what like very close to each other, I guess. All right. Nicholas asked a question about Canario. Hold on just a second. Typically I have a drink break, but apparently not when I'm going 32 minutes straight. All right. Nicholas asked, how high would Alexander Canario rise up your list if he is healthy and producing in AAA in a couple months? I'm excited to see him in Chicago one day. He will jump up a decent amount. So let's see what we got. Alexander Canario, right now I have as the 12th ranked prospect in the farm system. So like let's say for example he goes up to, which actually he posted a picture. He was at the airport today. So I don't know if that's him ending his rehab and going up to AAA Iowa. I can't imagine that'd be the case. I mean, I hope so. That'd be awesome. I think the likelier theory is that he is going up to a lower affiliate to continue his rehab, like going up to South Bend to keep working his way back up to AAA Iowa. That seems like a big jump going from the Arizona Complex League Cubs up to AAA Iowa, just like that. So let's go under the assumption that Alexander Canario is, I guess let me go back to the question here. Producing in a couple months. Oh yeah, so let's say he's going up to Iowa right now, and he performs the way he did when he was called up to Iowa last year, but does that over the course of the next 2 months. How high does Canario rise up these rankings? I think that I've said for a long time, like I want to continue to see that explosiveness with Canario. I think two things. So if he continues performing as well as he did last year, you can assume that the plate approach, the eye that he had, the lack of strikeouts continues, right? That's part of that success. So we can kind of knock that out of the way. That happens in his return from injury. The other thing is like stats won't really tell how explosive a guy looks, and that's so much of his game is hitting the ball hard, running hard, throwing hard, doing all these things that light up the baseball savant page. And the stats won't necessarily tell us that, so that's kind of something to take into account. We can assume though, if we assume he's back to last year's Alexander Canario, yeah, he's going to rise up these rankings. I'd say at that point we're looking at a tier 2 guy. I think that I don't know where I'd slot him exactly. Probably, ooh, I'm thinking probably third. I'm thinking probably between Cade Horton and Kevin Alcantara is where I would rank Alexander Canario, assuming he comes back, has a really strong couple months in Iowa. Because then at that point, like he's still a young guy. He is literally like a call away. Like there's value in a guy performing well in AAA and being a legitimate prospect, right? Like we've seen guys perform at AAA, but they're older guys. They're not like legitimate prospects in the light that they're going to go on to have a great major league career. But if Canario does it, that's a different story, right? So I think Canario probably slides into the third overall prospect in the system if he can do that. But that's probably a big if. Honestly, we have to expect when he returns from injury that Canario will kind of take things slow. He's not going to come back and have a 2 home run game in his first game out. But if he does, you guys can go back to this YouTube video, clip it, and say what an idiot Greg was, and that'll be great. I'd love that. All right. All right. Michael Eddy asked, does Miguel Amaya have a Wilson Contreras ceiling with 20 home runs, above average walks and strikeouts? No. I'd say no. My initial like thought is no. I think that the Wilson Contreras ceiling was enormous. he had stretches where like he had long stretches where he was arguably the best catcher in baseball. It was basically like him, Will Smith, and JT Realmuto that were like vying for that top catcher. I don't know if it's a prospect, top catcher in baseball. And so I don't think that expecting. I don't know. I guess if you're saying ceiling, I'm still saying no. I appreciate the question. I think that Miguel Amaya is going, like, he's come back from injury. He's still a young dude, and he's basically done everything we could ever want him to do, right? He's hitting for average. He is showcasing that raw power in game, which is something we'd hoped for when he was younger. The defense still looks strong. He just come back really, really well. The approach is obviously that's what Miguel Amaya was known for coming up through the lower levels, was that approach, right? So that looks really, really strong. That's huge. I think that like the ceiling for Miguel Amaya is like a strong starter at the major league level. I think the floor we're looking at is like a backup catcher, right? But dude, that I talked about it too in the article that I'll note again. You can reference in the description. But man, there's such a fine line between the development of a starting catcher in the major leagues and the development of a reserve or a backup catcher in the major leagues, right? Like that. All it takes is like hitting just a little bit more, because like defensively, you can hit like crap and still be good defensively as a starter or good defensively as a backup. Like that, there's no difference in those two qualities, right? So it's all about the bat. And it's like that fine line. If he's successful at the plate, then he can be a starter. If he's just like not quite as successful, then he's a backup. And like that's such a fine line. But like with that being a fine line, there's still such a ginormous like gap in that value of those two players, right? A consistent starting catcher at the major league level is so valuable. And a backup catcher at the major league level, like playing once or twice a week, is like hardly valuable at all. So the value difference is massive, but it's such a fine line between developing one of those two types of players. And I think Pablo Aliendo, who I have ranked as 17 there, I have Miguel Amaya at 7 and Pablo Aliendo at 17. Pablo's following that Miguel Amaya track, right? He's still like young for his level as a catcher, which is kind of wild to see. I think that like the peak outcome, like the absolute best outcome for Pablo Aliendo is whatever Miguel Amaya does, right? I think there's a little more variance in Pablo Aliendo because he's younger, he's at a lower level than Miguel Amaya, but like I think like he's following that same track as Miggy. All right. We're still turning through some questions here. I appreciate it, guys. Honestly, Michael, Kurtz, and Nicholas are carrying the team. We got some questions from Rich, which is awesome. Love them. All right. Kurt asked if the fall of DJ Herz, or he says the fall of DJ Herz is pretty crazy over the last year or so. Is he a reliever? Yeah. So I have DJ ranked as a 34th ranked prospect. I've caught some flack for that. I've got actually plenty of flack from that. Enough that I had to block somebody on Twitter. So that was good and fun. I've got DJ ranked as the 34th best prospect in the system. I love DJ Herz. Like we had him on the Growing Cubs podcast, friend of the show. Like DJ Herz, the human being, is incredible. Love him. I love the demeanor. I love the him off the field. I love what he brings to the table and the competitive fire that he brings on the field. I think DJ Herz is one of the easiest guys in the entire system to root for. And I think that his stuff is really good, right? Like the fastball doesn't like come up on you in terms of like mid 90s. We still haven't seen that jump. But we know that the stuff is nasty enough to get a lot of strikeouts and have guys really struggle to put the ball in play with authority. I had DJ ranked 34th, and most of that is because at this point I do view him as a reliever, right? So he's still working as a starting pitcher right now. I just worry that the command control is not going to be there to log consistent innings in terms of that pitch count. I just don't think that he'll be able to keep the pitch count down enough. Now, that's not taken away from the stuff, obviously. I think the stuff can be electric, but if you reference back to what I said earlier, where like Bailey Horn is my like top ranked and my only true reliever on this list at 37. So me saying I view DJ Herz as a 90% probability that he moves to the bullpen, 95% chance, and still rank him above Bailey Horn is really a compliment to him. Like I it sounds weird, right? But like I think that this is a strong ranking of DJ Herz. Obviously, it's way down from where he was in the past, but in the past we had he was younger, he was lower in the system, and we had more hope that he could stay as a starting pitcher. It's a lot like what we're seeing with Michael Arias, right? With Michael Arias, like, all right, can he stay as a starting pitcher? And if so, that's awesome. That's exactly what we want to see. But as Michael Arias continues to develop, if he can never develop that consistent command and control, then he becomes a reliever and he drops down this list too. So yeah, I think you can say like it's a fall off in terms of like where he's ranked, but like that's built into the fact that like our percentage of starting pitcher versus reliever, like the reliever risk has gone way up. And I hate the word reliever risk, but like it's there, but he can still be valuable as that. It's just not in terms of WAR. Like you're not producing WAR at the major league level, but producing some pretty fun outs in Chicago. All right. We're down to 8 people in the YouTube chat. We were up a little bit higher, so I won't go too awful long here. I'll wrap up with some questions. We have some really good questions here. I want to address this one from Michael really fast. What's the reason for Kevin Alcantara over Owen Casey? Is it pure athleticism? It seems like Casey has a better bat. Yeah, so Owen Casey has been a lot stronger, right? He's performing a whole lot better. He's performing well in Double A as a 20-year-old, while Kevin Alcantara is performing about league average in High A as a 20-year-old. So, and with Owen Casey, I'll say that he is looking more athletic. He's looking better on the base paths, and he's looking better on defense. And those three things are the reason why he was consistently ranked below Kevin Alcantara in the past. So he's kind of closing that gap. This is pretty much just a full-blown like my eye. Like I'll put on my scouting hat here, which I've never claimed to be good at scouting. I just watch a lot of these players and kind of rank what I see. There's just something about Kevin Alcantara, man. There's something about the Jaguar that I really like about him. Owen Casey's been really strong. There's a reason why I have him number 4 in the system. And I like this is not at all. I haven't ranked above Ben Brown and Jordan Wicks, who I love. Kevin Alcantara is just like there's something about him, dude. Like there's something about Kevin Alcantara. It's that athleticism that really like that pure athleticism, crazy. And I think the upside, like I know the upside with Owen Casey because he hits the ball hard as hell, like produces some of the best exit velocities in professional baseball, not just the minor leagues, not just Double A, and all of professional baseball. So like that is there with Owen Casey, and that's the upside. But Kevin Alcantara has that upside plus like really good defense in center field. Plus he can run the bases. Like it's just that's super close. Like that tier of 2 through 6, but especially 2 through 4, like that is so difficult for me to rank, man. Like I struggled the most with those 3 guys, but especially Kevin Alcantara and Owen Casey. I'm pretty sure I went back and forth on those 2 guys like 20 different times before I posted my article. All right. What else we got? We got some question. Let's go. Rich has got a comment about Canario here. I was referencing Alexander Canario earlier. He says that watching Canario in the ACL, the eye looks good to the plate, still shows explosive power, running okay, but not quite there yet out of the box, but that's to be expected. Yeah, I'm glad he said that. I'm glad Rich reported this because that's just something to keep an eye on, right? Like I'm glad that his eye looks good. That's exactly what we wanted to see. The power is like that. That's always that's fun. So I'm curious to see that running and see how he performs on defense too and how that translates. So I appreciate it, Rich. All right, what else we got? What else we got? We got a new person. We got Joshua in the comments, and he asked, "Is there anyone who has the potential ceiling of a Cade Horton as a starting pitcher in the Cubs system?" Cade Horton has the biggest ceiling. Well, actually, I take it back. Cade Horton and Jackson Ferris. Those two guys are, in my eyes, the highest ceilings by a long shot, really, in the system. Those two guys have top of the rotation stuff, have top of the rotation demeanor, have top of the rotation like metrics on their pitches. Like that's what you're looking for in terms of like the elite level potential. So Cade Horton and Jackson Ferris. Obviously, we've seen more of Cade Horton. He's gotten results over a longer period. I mean, just during the season, he's gotten those results. But Jackson Ferris, I mean, like he could soar up these lists. Like by the end of the year, Jackson Ferris could be that number 2 ranked prospect in the system. It's those two guys and then everybody else. I think that Ben Brown has some upside, but not like Horton Ferris. Jordan Wicks is more of a middle of the rotation guy. Cole Franklin can be in that conversation. I don't think it like in the same conversation as like Ben Brown, not Cade Horton and Mcgeary, or not Cade Horton and Jackson Ferris. Those two guys are kind of above and beyond everybody else. All right. Blah, 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 blah. All right, we got Tim Price in the comments asking, "What is Hayden McGeary's defensive skill set like? If he can continue to show power, there's a big difference between a first baseman and a DH, to state the obvious." Yeah. So this is actually this type of like the questions about Hayden McGeary is the number one question I've received since posting my article yesterday, and that's fully what I expected to be the case. So I've got Hayden McGeary ranked there as a 30th rank. He's sorry, I was looking for him. He's ranked 30th. I was blocking by the question. He's a 30th ranked prospect in the system, according to me. That gets tricky, right? With McGeary, defensively, I think that he kind of shows some potential over there defensively at first base. Like he's still getting like in college, he was a catcher, he was a DH, he was a first baseman sometimes too. Early on, I got to see him live over when he was with South Bend. They came over and played over in the Quad Cities, and I got to see him live. And he just looked kind of clunky from the perspective of like, I just don't think he was very experienced over there, right? Like he needed some work. But the athleticism is there a little bit, right? I don't think he's going to be a black hole at first base. I think he can play some first base defense. But and while I agree with you, Tim, that like there is a big difference between a first baseman and a DH in terms of like that value, like very clearly that's the case. The value you bring defensively at first base, I've been hitting on this for the last 2 years with Matt Mervis, and I think I'll continue hitting on this in the next 2 years with Hayden McGeary. That defensive value, like even if you're a Gold Glove first baseman, the difference between like the value of a Gold Glove defense first baseman and like a good defensive shortstop is a whole lot bigger than the difference between a Gold Glove first baseman and like a bad first baseman. You just don't get that defensive value playing first base as much. So like it just put my reason why I have Hayden McGeary 30th is because it just puts so much pressure on his bat. I've said it like over and over again that Hayden McGeary and Matt Mervis. They have to be like 120 WRC plus type guys consistently at the big league level to have value and to bring value to a team. And that's so tough, man. Like it's a tough ask and so much pressure on that bat. I think the bat's really good, but I just need to continue to see him do it all the way up to the major league level. Like, right. So like I think like the best case scenario with Hayden McGeary is that he is Matt Mervis, right? And so like I have Matt Mervis you can see Mervis ranked as number 11, and he's already made it up to the big leagues. I in a good system, which is what we have right now, like you're hoping that a Matt Mervis and a Hayden McGeary are not a top 10 guy in the system. People points like Tristan Cassis with the Boston Red Sox, like, oh, he's like an elite first base talent. It's like, yeah, but like even he is struggling with the bat. Like you have to have like Look at Spencer Torkelson, right? He was the number one draft pick. He was the guy who rushed up to the major leagues as a first baseman. They tried him at third base. That was kind of funny. But as a first baseman, you just have to hit. You just have to hit. And do I view like Matt Mervis and Hayden McGeary in like a number one draft pick like Spencer Torkelson view? Like, no, I don't, unfortunately. And like it's just a risky profile. Like, it's funny to look at a guy like Matt Mervis or Hayden McGeary for that matter and say like, oh, that's a risky profile because like they already bring so much value with the bat in the minor leagues. But like I view it as risky because it's like you're putting all your eggs in one basket and that scares the crap out of me. All right, all right, all right. What do we got here? Um all right, we got a question from FP Trees about Kevin Made. Just curious why you have Made at 20 while when he may not stick at shortstop and his bat doesn't seem like it can carry him to a top 100 status at second base. Completely agree. Completely agree that the bat will not carry if he's a second baseman. The bat will not carry him to a top 100 status. That will not happen. Kevin Made, I think, is very strong at shortstop. I don't think that I think saying that he may not stick at shortstop is um, a little premature. I don't see that as much. I'm not saying that it won't happen, but I think him getting some playing time at third base because he has an insane arm, him getting some playing time at second base. I don't think that like when Ed Howard came back and they wanted to play him at shortstop, I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I think that Kevin Made is very strong defensively, but I said in my write up, and I'll keep saying it like the bat has to catch up. The bat has to keep up, not necessarily catch up. I don't think like Christian Hernandez. I'm standing pat on how I view Kevin Made now as I did preseason. It's like we gotta wait and see. We gotta wait and see like what his body is when he's completely filled out. He added quite a bit of muscle this year. He really like going into this year. That's been impressive. But we got to see what the finished product is with the bat. If he continues to fill out and moves off a shortstop and he still doesn't hit, then yeah, like he's at that point not a top 30 prospect in the system. But if he can continue playing the strong defensive shortstop, which I know he has the ability to do, and he can bring the bat around a little bit. That's why he's the 20th ranked prospect in the system for me. Is just you're kind of hoping on. I think you're never seeing finished products with prospects, and Kevin Made for being in this, it seemed like he's been in the system forever. But he's still super young, dude. Like he's still a young guy. He's still what 20 years old. Um, I think that like there's still a work in progress with them, and I mean that in the best way possible. All right. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Michael actually asked about BJ Murray, who is going to the futures game. I got a comment about this on Twitter too. I've got BJ Murray ranked 36th, and he's going to the futures game. What's like the disconnect there? And then I got the question on Twitter asking if like because he's been selected the futures game, does he now climb up my rankings a little bit more? Yeah. So I guess a couple things with BJ. One is that like typically you see the futures game have a combination of two types of guys, right? One is guys that are like top prospects in all of baseball. That's the PCAs. And the other are guys that are like not too far off from the major leagues. And I think that's where BJ Murray falls in. They don't necessarily need to be top prospects in the system or all of baseball, but close proximity to the major leagues, like just strong all around players. Um, I think that like the reason why I have BJ Murray down at 36, it's not. Man, this is tough, dude. Because like I think most fans and even I view him as like in a higher light than 36 in the system. And I think that like paying attention to that tier system is important here too, right? Where like if you put him at 28, I wouldn't really bat an eye. Like if you put him as high as that. So with BJ Murray, the biggest adjustment is the biggest like hurdles, I guess, are yet to come, right? So he's in Double A Tennessee right now. That jump for a guy with his profile from Double A to Triple A is going to be huge. Where he's a guy that relies a lot on a good plate approach, taking a lot of walks. The bat has been significantly better. If his bat didn't perform in the way that it has so far this year, he would not even be this high. But the bats look better, but so much of his profile relies on drawing a lot of walks still now. And when you jump up to Triple A Iowa, guys have more command and more control over their pitches. you can't just spit on as many pitches as you once could. So that's a big jump. And then it's even bigger, that same exact scenario when you go up from AAA to the major leagues. So I just I think I'm careful on BJ because I just think that there's the biggest challenges he has yet to see. And I think that's obvious going up to AAA in the major leagues, but like especially for a guy like BJ. Like I think like that jump is even more difficult for BJ than like PCA, who's also a futures guy. So yeah, it's just me being careful. It's me kind of waiting to see if he can do that at the AAA level. I've loved what I've seen from BJ Murray so far this year. All right. We're approaching an hour. I was not at all expecting to go an hour on this show. I was expecting to go about 15 to 30 minutes. So we'll answer a few more. We'll probably in this right around the hour mark. Let's see. Let's see what we got. This is just a comment back agreeing that, yeah, the deal with McGeary and Mervis is that they have to be really strong offensively. Our guy, Todd, is asking, what do you see or who do you see as moving the most between now and the fall list? Okay, so Todd, you're the man. I appreciate you asking the question. Go check out his list. I'm going over my list here today that came out yesterday. Todd's list is live today. So at Northside Bound, we're going through, and this is prospect list week. I released my top 40 yesterday on Monday. Todd released his today on Tuesday. Greg Zumak is releasing his top 40 on Wednesday. We have our cumulative list. All three of us kind of combined our rankings, and we have our Northside Bound ranking that's releasing on Thursday. And then on Friday, you guys, the fans, participated in a fan-created prospect list that's dropping on Friday. So busy week. Please go check out. You can check out the same link that I have on the description below. Go check that out, and it'll take you to the Northside Bound website. From there, I'll trust that you guys can find Todd's article of his top 40. So Todd, again, ask if who I see moving the most, both up and down, before we redo our rankings this offseason. That's a good question. I have not considered that. So I'm going off the cuff here a little bit. I think that in terms of like maybe not necessarily moving a whole bunch of spots, but moving much higher considering how high they already are. Jackson Ferris is probably my answer in terms of moving up. I've got him 8 right now. Like I said earlier, I don't think that I don't think it's ridiculous to imagine a scenario where he's the second ranked prospect in the system by the end of this year. So Jackson Ferris is probably my high riser for that. If I'm going for a guy that is going up a whole lot of spots, give me. Let me move this for a second. Give me. I'll take. Ooh, this is tough. Drew. I think Drew Gray. Actually, Drew Gray is my answer. I've got Drew Gray at 26 right now. I think we could see Drew Gray now that he's assigned to Single A Myrtle Beach at this point. I think we see if he takes off and has a really strong year the rest of the season, I think we can see Drew Gray jump from 26 up to close to top 10. I think close to top 10 guy for Drew Gray. So that's the risers. How about guys that might fall down the list? Oh, that's tough. If this is my last question that I'm taking and it's going to be a downer, that's not fun. But all right, let's go with guys that have potential to fall outside of my top 40. I think that's the probably the easiest way to look at this, I'd say. Well, actually, I'll go with a guy up top first. I think Brendan Davis, if he doesn't come back this year, that's tough. That's tough. I don't know how far I would drop him, but if he can't come back from injury, that probably warrants another drop. Where like preseason's like, all right, he was a top 3 prospect in baseball or in the Cubs system. So that's a tough one. And then let's go with as far as a guy that can also fall down the list. All right, I think I don't know anybody up top, but I am gonna go with some of those guys that have potential to fall off the list. Unfortunately, I think Luis Vasquez is probably the first guy I'll kind of identify here, and because I think that like we've seen a strong performance in Double A with the bat, and like that's why he's on this list, right? Like Luis Vasquez is the best shortstop defensively that I've seen since I started covering this team a decade ago. The farm system a decade ago. So But he just like he was a black hole at the plate. Like he just could not hit. And that he just needed to hit at an average rate to like be something to be a defensive replacement at the major league level. And now he's like been strong at the plate. But they're like it just feels not sustainable. And now that he's been bumped up to AAA according to his Instagram today that he's going up to AAA Iowa. That's gonna be huge. Like if he goes up to AAA Iowa and is a 550 OPS guy the rest of the season, then like I think he drops off of here. I think he's kind of close to back to where he was before, where it's like, man, like the defense is just insanely good. But let's see, we gotta have some sort of offense. Another guy is I think Jake Slaughter. Some of these guys that are kind of like surprisingly on lists like over the last like, couple of years. I think like Jake Slaughter is another guy where I could see him falling off. I'm at 39 now. He's been like pretty strong. He's been a little streaky this year at the plate. But if Jake Slaughter really struggles the rest of the year in AAA Iowa, like he's a 26-year-old guy. If he struggles, like then he kind of falls out of prospect status entirely. So like he's got to continue hitting really, really well. He does other things well. Like I described my comp for Jake Slaughter was Jace Peterson, who is a player for the Oakland A's right now. And I think like that is what Jake Slaughter can potentially be. Brings different things to the table, but like that role on a major league team. But yeah, I think that's another candidate right there. All right, that's all I've got. That's all I'm going to address for Todd. So I appreciate Todd you sending that question in. I think that's all we've got. I got no more comments coming in. I actually never even had to address these questions. I came prepared. I came prepared with a pad of paper with some questions from Twitter. I didn't even have to address those very much. Most of those were telling me how much of an idiot I am. So I'm glad I didn't have to address those as much. These were much more fun questions to address. I appreciate everybody tuning in, popping their questions in the comments section. I'll go ahead and I don't think this is something that I'll pull into the podcast feed for Cubs on Deck, but I don't know. Maybe I'll change my mind. In the meantime, you can find this on the entire YouTube page. Go check out me on Twitter at Out of the Vines. You can check out the Cubs on Deck podcast where it's this content, but me actually talking with another human being and it actually making sense. That comes out every single week. We dropped episodes on Tuesday mornings. Go check that out on any podcast feed or on this YouTube feed. Subscribe to this channel if you want. I'm trying to get this channel off the ground even a little bit more than we already have. So send me a like, send me a subscription to this YouTube channel. Again, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been terrific. And maybe I'll do this a little bit more often. Take care, guys.